The town of Harrisville, Ohio, was the kind of place most people passed without noticing. One main road, a diner that closed at 8, and a small auto repair shop with peeling blue paint that read, "Eddie's Garage, honest work, fair price." Eddie Miller had owned that garage for nearly 15 years. His hands were always stained with grease, his back permanently bent, and his bank account never quite full. Still, Eddie had a habit that never changed. He treated everyone who walked into his shop like family. Rich or poor, broken car or broken heart, he listened first. On a cold November morning, a black luxury SUV rolled into the gravel lot. It didn't belong in Harrisville. Eddie wiped his hands on a rag, expecting a flat tire or engine trouble. Instead, the back door opened slowly, and a man in an expensive coat stepped out. His face was tired, eyes hollow in a way money couldn't fix. Then Eddie saw her. A young girl no older than 16 sat in a wheelchair. A blanket covered her legs. Her skin was pale, her eyes distant, as if she was somewhere far away. The man gently pushed her toward the garage. "My name is Richard Hale," the man said quietly. Eddie didn't recognize it, though the rest of the country would have. Billionaire, tech giant, news headlines, but to Eddie, he was just a father who looked scared. "Our car broke down on the highway," Richard continued. "Every place nearby is booked. Someone said you might help." Eddie nodded. "Let's take a look." As Eddie worked under the hood, he noticed the girl watching him closely. Her eyes followed every movement, curious but sad. "What's your name?" Eddie asked her gently. "Emily," she replied. Her voice was soft, almost fragile. "That's a good name," Eddie smiled. "Means strong." She gave a small smile, the kind that came and went too quickly. While Eddie replaced a damaged belt, he overheard Richard on the phone, whispering urgently. Words like specialists, failed treatments, and no progress floated through the air. Eddie didn't need details to understand. The girl couldn't walk. When the repair was done, Eddie named a price far lower than it should have been. Richard frowned. "That's not right." Eddie shrugged. "Didn't take long. Besides, it's cold out here." Richard insisted on paying more, but Eddie refused. Instead, he brought out 2 cups of hot cocoa from the tiny break room and handed one to Emily. "My daughter used to love this," he said quietly, "before she passed." Emily's eyes widened. "I'm sorry." Eddie nodded. "Me too. That's why I don't rush kindness anymore." As they prepared to leave, Emily suddenly spoke. "Mr. Miller, can I come back sometime just to watch you work?" Eddie laughed softly. "Anytime you want." Richard paused, something heavy shifting inside him. He looked at Eddie again, really looked this time, not as a mechanic, not as a poor man, but as someone rare. Neither of them knew that this small moment, in this forgotten town, was about to change Emily's life forever, and challenge everything Richard Hale believed money could fix. Winter slowly faded from Harrisville, Ohio, but Eddie Miller's garage stayed the same, all-stained floor, humming radio, and the quiet comfort of routine. What did change was the black SUV that began appearing every few weeks. Emily always sat by the open garage door, wrapped in a jacket, watching Eddie work. At first, she only observed. Then she started asking questions about engines, tools, and why Eddie never seemed angry, even when bolts snapped or engines refused to start. "You can't force things to work," Eddie would say. "You listen to them first." Those words stayed with Emily. One afternoon, Eddie noticed Emily trying to move her foot. Just a small twitch, almost unnoticeable. Her face tightened with effort. "Does it hurt?" Eddie asked gently. She shook her head. "No, it just feels possible here." That night, Richard Hale sat awake in his hotel room, replaying the moment. For years, the best hospitals in New York and Boston had told him the same thing, accept the limits. Yet in a poor mechanic's garage, his daughter seemed lighter, more alive. Against every advisor's recommendation, Richard made a decision. He rented a house in Harrisville. Weeks turned into months. Eddie never pretended to be a doctor, but he treated Emily like someone who could be whole again. He encouraged her to help, passing tools, leaning forward, shifting her weight. No pressure, no fear of failure. One spring morning, while Eddie was tightening a bolt, Emily gripped the workbench. "I want to try," she whispered. Richard froze. "Emily." Eddie raised a hand. "Let her decide." Slowly, painfully, Emily pushed herself up. Her legs shook violently, sweat beaded on her forehead. For a terrifying second, it looked impossible. Then she stood. Only for a moment, only with Eddie's steady hands supporting her, but she stood. Richard collapsed onto a chair, covering his face as years of helplessness broke apart. From that day on, Emily practiced every morning. Standing became stepping. Stepping became walking, first with help, then alone. Doctors later called it a rare recovery fueled by environment, mental safety, and belief. Emily called it Eddie. The day she walked into the garage without her wheelchair, the entire town gathered. Eddie stood frozen, hands shaking worse than hers ever had. "You did this," Richard said, voice thick. Eddie shook his head. "She did." Richard revealed the truth then, who he was, what he owned, what he could offer. He handed Eddie a contract, numbers that could change his life forever. Eddie read it once and slid it back. "I don't want money for being human," he said. "Just promise me you'll be that kind of father, and she'll be that kind of person." Emily hugged Eddie tightly. "You fixed more than cars," she whispered. Months later, a foundation opened in Harrisville, the Miller Garage Project, helping injured children recover through community, patience, and dignity. And every morning, Eddie still opened his garage. Same sign, same tools. But now the sound of footsteps, once thought impossible, echoed through the doorway.